Hello, beautiful creator. In this video, I'll show you everything you need to know about the 3D characters inside CreateStudio. From styling and color changes to walking and flying, let's dive in and bring your animations to life. Once you're in the Studio panel, you'll see two character options, 3D Creator and Characters. So what's the difference between these two options? The 3D Creator is actually an upgraded version of the Character option. With the 3D Creator, you can change colors and styles. You can choose clothing options. You can add your own logo to a t-shirt. You can use lip sync with voiceovers. And even rotate your character in 3D space. With the standard version of CreateStudio, you get access to 10 3D creator characters. On the other hand, under the Characters tab, you get access to 75 characters. But unlike the 3D creator characters, they don't offer customization. You can only use the preset animation actions and combine them on your timeline. Personally, I think the characters aren't very useful for business purposes, since you can't brand them. However, some characters, like the stickman, can still be useful. It really depends on what you're trying to create. Now that you know the difference, let's take a closer look at the 3D creator, starting with its most important feature, the animation actions. All right, before we continue, let me first delete this and make the timeline a bit larger. How do animation actions work? Well, for example, the intro of this video starts with a wave action, followed by a talking action. Let me show you exactly how I did that. As you can see, every character starts with the default idle action. Let's change that to the wave action. And then click on Add New Action to choose the talking action. As you can see, the character bar in the timeline expands as you add more actions. When you select an action in the timeline, the first options you'll see are facial expressions, eye blinking, and the ability to disable the start or end of the action. All right, now that we've covered the basics, let me show you some example scenes you can build. Scene 1. Pop up with a wave. First, decide where you want your character to pop up. I'll make him bigger so that only the upper body is visible when he pops up. Now that the character is in position, head over to the Motion panel. Select Position and choose Top to create the pop-up effect. Now head back to the Settings panel. Go to Actions and change Idle to Wave. All right, that was the pop-up motion. Next up, Scene 2, Walk In. All right, first let's change the idle action to the walking action. As you'll see, by default, the character walks to the left, and there are no built-in options for walking to the right, toward the camera, or away. Honestly, I don't know what the developers were thinking. Having only one walking direction isn't very user-friendly. But don't worry, with a bit of extra work, we can fix this. Let's say I want the character to walk in from the right. First, disable the start of the walking animation. Then, on the canvas, click on Rotate and drag to rotate the character to the right. Once it's facing the right direction, click Rotate again to exit rotation mode. Now drag the character outside the canvas. Make sure the playhead is positioned at the start of the character. Next, click on Add Animation above the timeline. Select Position and set the easing to linear. Now you'll see a line with 2 dots appear on your character's timeline. This represents the position animation. Select the end dot, then drag your character on the canvas to the spot where you want him to walk into. Now drag the dot to the end of the walking action in the timeline. Now choose the action you want your character to perform after walking in. I will select the Throwing Money action. Now, set your playhead right after the character finishes walking, just before he starts to rotate. Then, click on Add Animation and select Position, Rotation, and Character View. Now rotate the character to face forward. Keep in mind, it's important to rotate in the same direction the character has already started turning. This ensures a smooth and natural rotation. In this case, the character is turning to the left, so we need to continue rotating in that same direction. Now select the end dot of the rotation animation and rotate the character to face the front. Cool. Now let's move on to scene 3, walking toward the camera. First, we start by changing the action to walking, and then disable the start of the animation. Next, rotate the character so he's facing forward. Now we need to scale the character down to make him look smaller, as if he's far away in the background. Now let's add a scale animation. Make sure the playhead is positioned at the start of your character. Then click on Add Animation, select Position and Scale, and set the easing to linear. Now click on the end dot of the animation. Then scale up your character to make it appear as if he's walking closer to the camera. Now drag the end point of the scale animation so it lines up with the end of the walking action. Next, let's add another action. I'm going to choose the flexing muscles. As you can see, the character turns to the right during the animation. Now I'll show you 2 ways to create a smooth transition so he stays facing the camera. Now let's move the end point of our first scale animation just before the character starts turning. Next, we'll add a new animation. Select Position, Rotation, and Character View, and set the easing to linear. Now click on the end point of the animation and rotate the character to face forward. We can still see a slight turn in the character. To reduce this, disable the end of the walking animation. And set the easing of the last animation to circ. Cool, that looks okay. Now I will show you the second method. We'll add the same animation again, but this time we're going to create a smooth 360-degree rotation. Click on the end point of the animation and rotate your character in the same direction he's already turning. Let's make the animation a bit faster by shortening its duration in the timeline. Cool, that looks nice. All right, let's move on to scene 4, walking away from the camera. Let's say you want the character to walk away after a talking action, and then finish with a wave. First, we'll simply add the walking action. Next, move the playhead to the end of the talking action. Then click on Add Animation, select Position, Scale, Rotation, and Character View, and set the easing to linear. Now select the end point of the animation and rotate the character in the same direction he's already turning. Next, scale the character down to make it look like he's walking away into the distance. Now let's add the wave action. Next, move the playhead to just before the character starts to turn. Then, drag the end point of the walking animation to align with the playhead's position. Next, add another animation. Select Position, Rotation, and Character View. Then set the easing to linear. Now select the end point of the animation and rotate the character in the same direction he's already turning until he's facing forward. You'll notice the character is walking away in a slight curve, not in a straight line. If you want the character to walk in a straight line away from the camera, instead of curving, we need to adjust the animations. Let me show you how. Move the playhead to just before the character starts to turn, then click Add Animation and select Position, Rotation, and Character View. Now click on the end point of the animation and rotate your character in the same direction he's already turning. Now let's add the scale animation. Click Add Animation again, select Position and Scale, and set the easing to linear. Now select the end point of the animation and scale down your character. Now move the playhead to just before the wave action starts, and drag the end point of the last animation to line up with the playhead. Next, click Add Animation again and select Position, Rotation, and Character View, and set the easing to linear. Now click on the end point of the animation and rotate your character in the same direction he's already turning. Cool, that looks nice. Alright, now let's move on to the scene 5, the fly-in animation. First, change the idle action to flying like Superman, then disable the start of the animation. Move your character outside the canvas, reduce the scale, and slightly adjust the rotation downward. Next, make sure the playhead is at the start of your character's timeline. Then click Add Animation and select Position, Scale, Rotation, and Character View, and set the easing to linear. Drag the end point of the animation so it lines up with the end of the flying action. Now, select the end point of the animation and drag your character to the position where you want him to fly in. If needed, scale him up and change the rotation so he's facing forward. And remember, you can always shorten the animation in the timeline to speed up the flying effect if you want a quicker entrance. Cool, that looks nice. Quick note, all characters include basic actions like idle and working on a PC, but not all have the same full set of animations. It would make more sense if every character had access to all actions. But hey, it is what it is. I mean, after all, it's just a one-time payment of $67 to get access to the software. If you're interested in trying it out for yourself, you'll find the link to the exclusive deal in the description. Alright, now let's take a quick look at logo placement. So, you have placeholders you can use on devices like laptop and PC, and logo options on clothing, items like t-shirt, superhero top, and hat. Adding your logo is actually quite simple. Just select your character, go to the Customize tab, scroll down, and click on Logo. As you can see here, you'll get options to upload either your logo or a placeholder image. Keep in mind, not all characters have the same logo placement options, but all of them support at least the standard t-shirt logo. Personally, I think it would make more sense if all clothing items had logo support. But hey, it's not my software, I'm just a user. Another cool thing you can do is export your 3D character as a PNG image with a transparent background, so you can use it on your website or other media. For example, I used it on my Dutch website. Just click on Publish, select Image, PNG, enable transparent background, and then choose your output file location to export. And if you want to export your character as a video with a transparent background to use in another video editor, just choose Video, select Move Format, and enable transparent background. Here's another trick. If, for whatever reason, you'd like to use your character as a shadow silhouette, simply go to the Customize tab, scroll down, click on Lights, and set all the light values to 0%. Of course, there's always more you can do with these characters. For example, you can use just the faces and place them on any object. I made a full tutorial on that, which you can find on my channel. And if you want to learn more about how to brand your character, there's a tutorial for that too. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I wish you a wonderful day